one of the hosts of the weebologypodcast, Ethan, and today I'll talk through the finale of one of the absolute dopest shows of the year, Vinland Saga. It was a fitting end to a season that will leave a lasting legacy in anime. First off, obviously spoilers for this episode, as I'll try to analyze as much as I can, and definitely a few of the plot points I thought that were specifically pretty important to this season in general. Also, one last point before I begin, I did not read the manga, so any theories or thoughts I have at the end may already be answered, and I do not care. We can talk about it in the comments if you, if you already saw or watched it, you know, what's the point? But if you have theories as well, it'd be nice to hear from you down in the comments. Okay, so to begin, at the end of the last episode, King Sewin calls for Askeladd to kneel before him. He offers him 50 pounds of silver for serving as Canute's vassal and also returning him to Sewin. Sewin then proclaims that he is anxious to hear of Askeladd's battles in Wales in the coming spring. Askeladd realizes he had let himself show too much emotion when Sewin mentioned the conquest in Wales. Askeladd speaks up and questions the king's decision to march on Wales, which caused quite a stir amongst the Danish noblemen. He cited his reasoning as focusing on rebuilding of the Danish forces after a long 10-year battle in England and a lack of resources in Wales due to it being a barren, craggy kind of land, making it kind of sort of useless in terms of, you know, a strategic piece for resources. So Sewin pulls him close and kind of whispers to him that Wales' only real export is slaves, and asks kind of why he shows such deference to Wales. And then at the end he kind of says like, oh yeah, they say your mom was a slave, huh? And then, you know, so I think that was kind of very cheeky for King Sewin. The king offers Askeladd an ultimatum, Wales or Canute. He reveals that he doesn't really care for the conquest in Wales, and if Askeladd will kill Canute, he will allow Wales to go free. Askeladd insults the king and basically says that crown doesn't, you know, you don't deserve to have that crown on such an ugly face type situation, and pulls his sword on him. The king offers Askeladd forgiveness twice, which is pretty rare for a king to do. And then if he just lays down his sword, all will be forgiven kind of thing. And then at this point, Askeladd kind of drops an absolute bombshell on the Danish nobles gathered there and proclaims that he is the rightful ruler of that land, and that his mother actually named him Lucius Artorius Castus. Askeladd goes absolutely wild, beheads the king in a kind of murderous frenzy, and then Canute explains to Thorkel that he is saving Wales and Canute by absolutely going apeshit. Thorkel tells him that he must be the one to clean up the mess, as basically the master needs to clean up for his dog. It was the exact line that he said. Askeladd is then chopping through tons of Danish guards and finally is fighting Floki, and Thorfinn walks in the room and distracts Askeladd for a second, just enough for Canute to come up and kind of stab Askeladd in a location that bleeds very heavily and is basically a guaranteed death. So, you know, Thorfinn makes it to Askeladd, and he comes over and he's just kind of a broken man at that point. He cries over him. He asks him to get up and flee with him. This isn't how this was supposed to end. He's completely distraught that Askeladd has fallen, and basically he was not able to wield his blade against him in, you know, revenge for his father's death. Thorfinn is kind of spoken to by Askeladd in that final moment, and Askeladd says this quote I wanted to kind of get word for word. How do you plan to live your life? In the future, after I die, how do you plan to live your life, Thorfinn? You haven't thought about it, have you? Move forward already. Don't stay stuck in a damn boring place like this forever. Go far ahead. Go beyond the world of Thors. That's your real fight. Become a true warrior, son of Thors. And, you know, he passes away at that point. And then Thorfinn, kind of out of pure rage, attacks Canute and is restrained by Thorkel. Everyone says, kill Thorfinn, he's a traitor, that kind of thing. And Canute basically says, like, this cut on my cheek is a small price to pay, for basically what he did to him. And then, Canute assumes the throne, and Thorfinn is kind of left empty. And so that kind of gives you a quick little recap of the show last episode. The episode is called The End of a Prologue. And when you kind of put that into perspective, it's pretty insane to think like that was literally just the prologue of this story. And in the context of the kind of worldwide, now that Canute is king, Harald, which was the older brother of Canute and the oldest son of Samhain, is, in my opinion, obviously going to be slightly pissed off by this situation and try to come back for Canute and get the throne that he's basically promised previously. But some really great parts about this episode. There was this cinematic in Thorfinn's knife as it was falling, kind of as he was being pulled back from Askeladd's dead body. And you kind of saw flashes from his whole season, the whole thing kind of leading up to, like, the reason he was wielding this knife was literally to take revenge on Askeladd. And now that this goal he's been aiming for, whether good or bad, is now taken away from him, I mean, there's just nothing left, and you just see it kind of tumbling, and like all this, strife and stuff that he's dealt with is just kind of falling to the earth, symbolically, because he's got really no direction at this point. So I thought that was a very interesting kind of play that they did there. So to kind of talk about Askeladd's like kind of mad lad play there was really no other option for them to be able to get Canute to assume the throne and also kind of save Wales, other than doing this. Something you got to realize is that, Canute is the younger son of Samhain and less favored, and frankly, he wants him dead. Samhain does not want Canute to be in a situation where he ends up taking the throne. So if, Askeladd doesn't do this now, Canute is almost definitely going to get killed. Samhain's not a good dude. None of these, Nordic kings were great people. If they kind of wanted you dead, they would get you killed. And I mean, look at the situation with Askeladd and Ragnar. Ragnar was pissing off Askeladd. Askeladd pulled him out to battle and had him killed, that kind of thing. So this is definitely a situation where if Askeladd doesn't pull this play off, Samhain doesn't really care about Wales, like obviously, but he definitely would go after Wales just to get Askeladd, because Askeladd is a very formidable foe politically and just in general for Samhain, because while they're kind of in the same area, Samhain and Canute, Samhain should be on edge because at really any moment this could happen. Someone could go after him, and Canute assumes the throne, which he kind of did. Some things I didn't like, though, about this specific episode and maybe like the season in general, I wish they had kind of showed any familial connection between Thorfinn and Thorkel. I think, obviously Thorfinn knows that Thorkel is his great uncle or whatever, but there never seems to be any like, desire to talk about history or life, or, there's no love between them. And I think it was a huge miss in terms of the drama of like never ever letting Thorkel know that Askeladd and Floki killed Thors. I think if he had known that, he would have lost his absolute mind and probably gone after Askeladd, and we would have seen another sick battle, Askeladd versus Thorkel, which I think would have been great to add to the show. And then to not give like the next mission as being Floki, I think. And like letting everyone know that, Askeladd telling him on his deathbed that, hey, Thorfinn and Thorkel, Floki was actually the mastermind, behind Thor's death. And then, let them both kind of plot their revenge against him, kind of giving him more direction, I think would have been very nice. I think they did do a really good job of driving home like the plot point of Askeladd being Thorfinn's like surrogate father, and honestly like raising him in the ways of combat, frequently telling him he would be unable to ever beat him if he couldn't keep his emotions in check during battle. You kind of see Askeladd only ever lose his cool when faced with the treatment of his mother, kind of her being a slave and people kind of talking crap about that. But other than that, he's calm and collected every freaking time. And the way that he's able to continue to win all these fights is experience and continuing to think. So I think, kind of trying to impart that knowledge onto Thorfinn. And then, he does speak with reverence towards Thor's. And I think Thorfinn definitely, obviously he's after revenge against Askeladd the whole season, but I think Thorfinn did take some of that reverence to heart and kind of looked at Askeladd as, not a great guy, obviously, but definitely a guy he can learn from and kind of aspire to beat, because he's definitely, I think, undeniably a great warrior. So definitely someone to come after there. And then, just kind of to wrap it up, I think, Thorfinn's really left with no direction. I don't really know where he could go from here. Obviously, I think next season will have a lot to do with Harald coming for Canute, because, word is going to get around that, Canute's vassal kills the king, and I don't think that's going to look very good for Canute, and definitely not with his brother, his older brother Harald coming back. I assume there's going to be some kind of clash there. And, I kind of wish Askeladd had given Thorfinn his sword. I think his sword is very clearly kind of not like a definitive feature of Askeladd, but he's always carrying it. It's very ornate, and it kind of seems like, this is like completely headcanon, but it seems like a better sword than most people around there are carrying, most Danes. So like handing that off to Thorfinn, and kind of the graduation from knife that he got from Thor's to sword from Askeladd, I thought could add a lot of kind of continuity moving forward, and then also just kind of showing that he's not happy, and like, he can go after Floki with with kind of Askeladd and Thor's with him, in representing the weapons kind of situation. I thought that would be kind of interesting. So it's a little sad that never ended up going down. But just beautiful episode, great season. Definitely highly recommend, if you are watching this video right now without having seen any of the season or even the finale, I definitely suggest you go watch that. Great fights, great characters, just like a lot of historical basis too, and just kind of some cool situations now coming up. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please hit the like button, comment, subscribe. We'll definitely be doing more of these types of videos. Just thank you guys for coming to class, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.
Come true.